I will now take the precedent for the Planning Committee by roll call. Councillor Alec Allison is in attendance. With apologies for Councillor Barker, Councillor Bert Thompson is attending as a substitute. With apologies from Councillor Arch Buchanan. The following members are in attendance: Councillors Ross Clark, Jerry Convery, Margaret Cowie, Maureen Devlin, Mary Donnelly. Councillor Joe Fagan is not in attendance. Councillor Gladys Ferguson-Miller is in attendance. We have apologies from Councillor Elise Frame. Following councillors are in attendance: Councillors Alistair Fulton, Charlene Handybode, Mark Horsham, Ross Lambie. Councillor Monique McAdams is not attending. Thank you. Councillors Leslie MacDonald, Dave McLaughlin and Richard Nelson are in attendance. Councillor Norman Ray, I believe, is delayed. We have apologies from Councillor John Ross. Councillor Ali Salamati is in attendance. We have apologies from Councillor Graham Scott. We have apologies from Councillor David Shearer, and Councillor Julia Mars is attending as a substitute. And Councillors Helen Toner and Councillor David Watson are both in attendance. Thank you. I'll now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. Colleagues, before we start the formal business today, as we are all aware, last week we lost our beloved Queen. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was truly a remarkable Queen who touched so many people in our communities. If able, can I ask you to please stand and observe a minute's silence to mark the death of Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II. Go to today's business. Agenda item 1, any declarations of interest? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. Item 6 for clarity and transparency. I'm a recent student at UWS, but having considered it, I don't believe it arises to a conflict of interest, so I'll stay in the meeting for that item if that's okay with you yourself.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I'm sure you've did the test yourself, and you will know yourself under the Code of Conduct whether that suits for you. Any other online? Councillor Donnelly. Sorry, Councillor Donnelly, can you just, we just missed you just at the start. If you could just go back to the start again, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest in item 1, the erection of a single-storey rear extension, P/22/0954. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. I would imagine that that's agenda item 3 that you were referring to, not 1.
Sorry.
And can I just clarify your reason for the declaration of interest, Councillor Donnelly, please?
Yes, it's an extension at my own home.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Mars.
Thank you, Chair. Can I confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish to declare an interest on item 3, the P/22/0954, and the nature of the interest is personal relationship with the applicant.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mars. That's noted. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous minute. I'll move these as approved.
Second.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, application P220954, application for erection of single-storey rear extension at 59 Newfield Crescent, Hamilton, pages 13 to 20 in your pack. And if I can ask Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Mars just to leave the meeting, we will send you an email when we are finished with this application and agenda item, and we will call you back in. I'll just make sure the clerk that they're out. Thank you, Stuart. I'm going to ask Bernard to run through the application P220954, and as I said already, it's pages 13 to 20 in your pack. Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a single-storey rear extension at a semi-detached property located on Newfield Crescent, Hamilton. The proposed rear extension would cover an area of approximately 18 square metres and would accommodate a dining and sitting area. Externally, it's proposed to finish the extension in a combination of brown dry dash render to match the existing and dark grey slate. In terms of the location of the property, it's within the general urban area, and in policy terms, the proposal raises no issues. Policy DM2 relates to house extensions and alterations, and again, this proposal raises no issues. No consultations were required to be undertaken, and one representation has been submitted, raising two main points. One relates to overshadowing and loss of daylight, and the other relates to the location of guttering and downpipes. In terms of both of these issues that have been raised, the proposal has been assessed, and it's not considered that the development would have an unacceptable impact on overshadowing of neighbouring properties, and it has been confirmed that the guttering and downpipes would be located within the application site. Overall, the property is considered to have adequate rear garden space to accommodate a proposal of this size. There has only been one letter of objection, and following detailed consideration of the proposed extension, it's been determined that the proposal complies with the relevant policies of the local plan and is therefore considered to be acceptable. It's recommended that the application is approved. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Bernard. I'll just open up for any questions. Nope. Happy to approve?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. I'll just wait on Councillor Mars and Councillor Donnelly rejoining the meeting before we go to agenda item number 4. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, application P220524, erection of 296 houses and associated infrastructure works. Applicant Bellway Homes Limited and Abbey Developments. I'm going to ask Ian Morton to go with this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the erection of 296 houses and associated infrastructure and is the approval of a matter specified in conditions relating to our previous planning consent EK 09218, which relates to Phase 2 of the East Kilbride Community Growth Area. The application site lies to the west of Trent Place, Tyne Place and Swift Place and Derwent Water, to the north of the current development of Newlands Road and north east of the newly constructed CJ Spine Road and the southern edge of East Kilbride. The site lies to the eastern edge of the master plan approved as part of the previous planning permission EK 09218, which was for a mixed-use development comprising residential, retail and education uses and associated engineering works. The site is currently primarily agricultural land and it has varied topography and generally rises from the Spine Road towards the north-east at Trent Place and Swift Place, then falls away to the south-east and the watercourse, and then rises steeply in the south-east corner towards Derwent Water. The application site covers an area of approximately 12.47 hectares. The application seeks to discharge various conditions imposed on the previous planning permission in principle for the development of the East Kilbride Community Growth Area, and Condition 1 specifies that all relevant matters such as layout, siting, design, landscaping and drainage are submitted to and approved by the Planning Authority. The development will comprise a mix of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroomed houses and 2-bedroom cottage flats comprising 224 detached, 16 semi-detached, 36 terraces and 20 cottage flats. The development incorporates 56 affordable housing units located in the northern area of the site, and these dwelling houses will be provided by Bellway Homes and operated by South Lanarkshire Council. The proposal has been broadly designed in accordance with the designing street principles and includes a variety of surface materials differentiating between parts of the proposed layout. In terms of the background and the local plan status, in land use terms, the site is identified within the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 as forming part of the designated East Kilbride Community Growth Area. In terms of relevant government and advice and policy, in terms of residential development, the SPP advises that the planning system should enable the development of well-designed, energy-efficient, good quality housing in sustainable locations, and that the council must maintain a 5-year supply of effective housing land. As previously outlined, the planning permission in principle was previously approved at Planning Committee in June 2018, subject to the conclusion of a Section 75 legal agreement. Following the signing of this agreement, the planning permission in principle was subsequently issued in October 2019, and this application relates to a part of Phase 2 of the CJ development and is located north-east of the newly constructed Spine Road and the proposed central amenity area. There have been a number of consultations carried out, none of whom offered any objections other than Jackton and Thornton Hall Community Council, who objected to the proposed development on the grounds that it does not adhere to local plan policy. Her response would be that the approved master plan for the site did not identify a substantial woodland buffer along this boundary, and following submission of the current application, the proposed bands have been amended to increase this landscaped buffer. This will be discussed further in the representation section. We received 18 letters of objection, a petition with 15 signatures and 1 letter of support. Main objections that I would pull out would be the proposed development is not consistent with the approved planning permission and principal master plan. The proposed development is not consistent with the approved planning permission and principle in respect of design and layout. Also, that the proposed houses are closest to Trent Place and Tyne Place and will have north-facing gardens, causing the residents to use the end of their gardens closest to the existing properties, with increasing amenity issues, therefore causing a loss of amenity to existing and new residents. There was a representation in relation to the amount of time offered to the residents. I would confirm that the application was received and validated on the 29th of April, and it has now been possible to make comment up until the date of this committee. In order to summarise the main points of objection, the main issue appears to relate to the distance between the proposed houses and the existing houses at Tyne Place and Trent Place to the north of the site. There are other buffers which exist within the site to existing residential sites. However, these were already in place. Also, there is an attempt by the developer and through the master plan to integrate existing residential properties with the proposed development, and this helps to provide such matters such as footpath connections. In terms of the assessment and conclusion, the principle of the development has already been established, and this assessment relates to the details of the housing layout and associated works. I would particularly pick out Policy 6, the Community Infrastructure Assessment, and Policy 12, Affordable Housing and Housing Choice. Through the previously approved legal agreement, there was a requirement within the site to provide affordable housing. This will be taken up by the Council's housing service, whilst the actual houses themselves will be constructed by Bellway Homes, and this will result in 56 units, which will be purchased by South Lanarkshire Council through the Affordable Housing Supply Programme. The site provides suitable garden ground and will create part of the CGA central open space areas. A kickabout pitch will also be within this central open space, together with walking routes as part of the wider CGA provision. The educational and transportation related requirements associated with the proposal have also been assessed on a cumulative basis as part of the previous application. Taking into account these matters, it's considered that the proposals comply with policies 6 and 12. In summary, the site is part of the previously approved East Kilbride Community Growth Area, and it will provide a second phase for Bellway Homes to provide a number of houses in keeping with the master plan. It will also result in a significant number of houses to be provided to the housing service, and for those reasons, the Council is recommending approval. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And I'll open up for any questions or comments. Councillor Salamati.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you.
Can I just check you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just a small comment. It's nothing in terms of objection. Just notice that a large part of this development is in Ward 9. A small part of it is in Ward 6. Has this been considered? You know, whether the boundary of work will change, or will all be will be in one ward, or is just going to be a split? Is there going to be a road where there is a kind of boundary of wards? I didn't see any comment or any mention of this in this regard.
Thank you, Councillor Salamati.
Thank you.
I'll ask Ian, and then from the roads point of view, I'll ask if Fraser has anything to comment on. Ian?
Thank you, Councillor Salamati. The application site covers, like you say, a number of wards. It is a substantial development, the community growth area. There aren't any specific matters put in place to reflect that. It's the site was allocated through the previous local development plan, through previous applications. Obviously, when the application is submitted, it's available for comment for anybody across any wards. But in terms of planning, there would be no specific, that wouldn't be specified on site if you like that it was over two separate wards.
Thank you.
So in that regard, there won't be a change of boundary in wards as it stands required after this development.
No, Councillor Salamati, no, there won't be. I'll ask Fraser just to come in and just in this part for roads. Fraser, do you want to comment?
Sorry, could I just clarify what the question was, Councillor Salamati?
Yeah, my question was, part of this development is in Ward 9, majority of it, and a small part of it to the south is in Ward 6. Since there is no kind of, the illustration of the roads, where the roads will be, I didn't see it. I wonder if the current ward boundaries will need to change depending on the design of the site.
Sorry, Fraser, I'll just come in. I don't think that's really a question for Fraser to answer. There won't be any changes to the boundary in your ward, Councillor Salamati.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor David Watson.
Thanks, Chair. I think at the outset I'll say that I think this is the application is accepted in the principle that it's part of the community growth area that a decision was taken in 2018. But specifically regarding this application, I've got a number of concerns. I'll start off with, well, sort of planning papers indicate that there's a letter of support, but when you actually read that letter of support, it was an email. It's actually outlining the agreeing principle with the layout of the site, but they then go on to raise a number of questions about the linkage within the site and recreational facilities in the area and the link into the existing area of Mossnook and Garden Hall. So I wouldn't say it's a letter of support. There are issues in that would normally be addressed as an objection, but we'll put that aside, having made that point. I think it's been made that this site borders an existing area of housing that's been there for about 30 years, Trent, Tyne and Swift Place, an area of Garden Hall. And although there was a consultation held in 2018, there's been no real public consultation held for neighbours to make comment on this as a group with the developer and maybe come to some conclusion, which I find disappointing considering that's the way that we're meant to be going about open consultation and public meetings, etc., or online meetings, as we've had in recent years with major developments. Reading the papers, I mean, right to say that, probably the most contentious area of this is the boundary and the buffer zone. And you read the papers and it said that the buffer zone does not include, the site, I'm trying to think of the terminology here. I think it said basically the buffer zone doesn't include this area, but it covers areas nearer the main roads, but it buffers onto existing residential areas. Local residents that were at the meeting in 2018, which was attended by the ex-councillor Michael McCann and Deputy Leader of the Council and also Alan Pepler at the Planning Department, are telling me that they were told that there would be a substantial buffer zone and 20 metres has been mentioned. I can't verify that, but I can only say that it's been told to me on more than one occasion, because I can't find any note or minute of that consultation meeting. And unfortunately, Michael McCann and Alan Pepler are no longer with the authority. But from what I can see in the plan, is it looks like the buffer zone at these residential areas is only going to be about 5 metres. And I say it's not the best of looking at these things, but it looks about 5 metres of a buffer zone, and I don't think that's substantial, to be honest. And I'm also understanding that the site at this area is to be terraced as it goes, it goes down, the topography runs down to the Gill Burn. And again, that's going to elevate the new houses. Although I have got an email, and I couldn't find it last night when I was looking for it, I'm sure that said that there was really to be no changes to the topography of that area, but my understanding is there are plans within the document pack, but not being an expert at reading these sort of plans, I'm not quite sure what they say, but looking at the area and talking to local residents, the indications are that is going to be elevated. And again, that's going to have an impact on the existing settlement. I think as well, some of this runs into the whole master plan for the site. There's no mention of the active travel plan. There's no mention of community facilities that were meant to go along with this whole site, and maybe that's something we need to get addressed at some point in this committee under section 75 for the site. Because if you go back to the 2018 application, there was to be improvements to the Greenhouse Hall, the Greenhouse Library, Calder Glen Country Park and the Dunedin Recreation Area. There was also to be improvements to the road network heading up to Hare Myers Station and safer crossings. One of the points that's been raised here, and rightly so, is on Greenhouse Road. It's an extremely busy road. There's no pedestrian crossing being allowed for in this site, where it will link into Greenhouse Road through Trent, Tyne and Swift. So residents will be expected to come across the existing area, go to Greenhouse Road for going to school, going to the shops, going to anything else within the main Hare Myers area. And there's no allowance being made for a safe crossing on that road. There is one further up at Greenhouse End, there's one further down towards Garden Hall Pub End, but not one being allowed for in the middle section. And it's something that I've raised on a number of occasions already, and now we're going to put more pedestrian traffic onto that site. So one other point within the report as well says that there's going to be car charging points within the site, but it doesn't indicate how many there are going to be, where they're going to be located and who's going to own them and maintain them. So I'll be interested in that. And sorry for going on, Chair, but just a couple of points on the conditions that are being put on. As you know, I've raised previously concerns about us putting conditions on planning applications and then how we enforce them. And again, I think there's a number of conditions on here that we question how future they're enforced. One being landscaping. If a developer doesn't do the landscaping and maintain it to the way that we expect, what are the sanctions on that? I say that because there's another site near that area where the developer's ignoring their obligation to landscape the site, and I keep getting told there's a limit to what we can do and the sanctions are minimal. There's another here about visibility displaying the roads, and again I'll cite another site locally where I've had complaints recently about visibility displaying the roads, and I'm getting told that there's nothing can be done because it's private land that's overgrown and residents coming out of an area can't see on Eaglesham Road. So it goes on. I mean, the other one there about footpaths, links, and if they're not done to our standard, you know, what happens? And I think the final one there is that was the charging points. I've already raised that again, that is to put in charging points. Doesn't say where they are or whatever, and who's going to maintain them. So I know there's a number of points there, but if somebody could give me some reassurance on that, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. A lot of comments and questions within that, and I do know that this was here previously before, and the previous chair was probably passed at this meeting, and that's why it came back for approval of matter specific and those conditions. But further to that, I'll ask Ian and possibly Fraser, because I know there's some roads concerns in there about the pedestrian crossings and charging points, etc. So I'll try and keep this as short as we can, just to give your points back. I'll come to Ian first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Watson. I've made a few notes there, so I'll go through them as quickly and as effectively as I can. In terms of the public consultation, there was obviously a consultation event carried out at the very start of the process. However, I would acknowledge that that was 10 years ago. I think, as I referred to in the report, that the application has been in for, just given the size of the proposal, it's been in for approximately 5 months. We've had a number of contacts from the general population asking for more information. We've provided that. Point we would make is that the public consultation was available for about 5 months. In terms of the developer side, they are under no obligation to enter into any kind of beyond the sort of public consultation that's required before a major application is put in. That would have related obviously to the previous master plan application. However, for this application, they weren't required to undertake that public consultation. They could have, if they'd wanted to, taken matters up directly with the neighbours. As I say, they're under no obligation to. The council's obviously got to remain independent in terms of our assessment for it, so we can't necessarily offer up sort of public meetings or anything like that. So, as I say, there was a period of approximately 5 months where people could come forward, and we aided people as much as we could when they did contact us. In terms of the next point about the buffer zone, as I said previously, a number of other parts of the site do have a more substantial buffer zone, simply because there was tree planting in place already. There's matters to do with things like topography, which come into play as well. I mean, specifically for this area of the site, there was a small area of planting. Originally, when the plans came in, the developer was leaving a gap to allow that. We actually, through negotiation, have managed to increase the buffer, albeit it's not. I mean, different people have different understanding as to what substantial is. I wouldn't try and pretend that it's going to be as wide as the buffer plans that are elsewhere on the site. As I say, there are topographical reasons for that, but we have managed to increase the width of the buffer by in part sort of 4 metres. There will be additional planting that will go in. One thing I would also stress is that the buffer is between the back of the fence to the back of the fence of existing and proposed houses. So we actually then factor in the rear elevation of a property to the rear elevation of a property proposed and existing. There is a substantial distance there as well. The next point I think I had was about the levels on the site and the elevation. We have checked it on site. Where the houses are closest to Tyne Place and Swift Place, they are going to be on the same level, effectively, if even just slightly below that. So they will be sitting at the same level as the houses. It does rise slightly as we come further southwest, and then it drops down again towards the middle of the community growth area, just again due to topography. We've checked window-to-window distances, and we're satisfied that there is, when you apply the buffer, you apply the window-to-window distances, and you apply the layout of the properties. We're satisfied that there won't be a loss of privacy there. In terms of the next point, I think it was the Section 75 improvements, and whilst we did make a mention of some of them in the report, it's important to remember that this application is really just a specific housing pod for the master plan site, and sitting underneath and sort of underpinning the entire development are the Section 75 requirements. So these will all be happening whilst the site develops. The amounts were all agreed with the developers before the first application was granted for an individual pod, and as the site builds out, more and more improvements will be added. There will be a pot of money coming in from the developers constantly, which will help to go towards that. I mean, one example I would give is that the new primary school, which is to the west of the site, it's now commenced works. As a result of money coming in from the developers, along with the spine road itself, which is nearing completion now. and there will be open space, substantial open space included within the master plan. So not just to existing residents, not just to proposed residents in the master plan area. There will be opportunities for people living in Garden Hall and Mossneuk to access the site and use the facilities there as well. I'll maybe jump over the car charging, and I'll let maybe Fraser come in a bit more on that. But there is car charging going to be available to the residents. Each individual property will have the ability to charge its own car, but there will be communal ones where there are terrace properties, and they will be managed by the council, certainly where it's in the council land. In terms of the conditions, I totally take your point there, Councillor Watson. I mean, the conditions are only as good as our ability to enforce them. We do our best. We work with the developers. Generally, on a development like this, we are in constant contact with the developers, not just between their proposed sites, but sites that they may already have on site, which I'm pulling that out specifically here because Bellway obviously do have a presence on site at the minute. We try and do our best in terms of ensuring that they're meeting all the requirements of their conditions. They do have things like traffic management plans that they have to adhere to in terms of delivery times, in terms of access points by which lorries will come into the site. We've got conditions relating to things like dust to ensure that these are adhered to as well. Hours of operation is one that's normally referred to, but we do work with, again, the developers to remind them of their responsibilities. Does it work 100% all the time? No, I don't think I would ever try and pretend that that was the case, but we do our best, and the councils and through the enforcement charter we will take on any type of enforcement that is in the public interest. I would make a quick point about, there are, as I say, footpath links that have already been approved by the previous layout of the master plan, which is one that will certainly be incorporated within this specific development, which will go up to Garden Hall. One thing I would say about the visibility displays, the main access points into the site are all coming from, the Spine Road, which has been designed to the appropriate standards to ensure that cars can enter and exit safely. As I say, I'll maybe let Fraser answer the question about the crossing in Greenhills Road, and maybe a bit more detail about the car charging, if that's okay.
Thanks, Ian. Fraser?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just looking at the development site, as Ian said, if you go back to the PPP approval, there was a number of kind of routes that were recognised to serve the whole community growth area, and there's a contribution that the developers are paying for to improve some of the links, one of which I can recall is upgrading an existing East Kilbride cycle route link that was quite historic but could do with upgrading. The link footpath that leads out the kind of north of this site actually takes you onto Greenhills Road, where there is a reasonably close underpass that can get people across Greenhills Road. There's also a contribution that the developers will pay towards getting a better link towards the Hare Myers and the station as it stands at the moment. Obviously, since the PPP consent was granted, there's proposals for the relocation of the train station, and as part of that, there are active travel plans being considered in getting people to the train station, which is separate to this application. You mentioned, Councillor, that there was a number of off-site roadworks, and that's correct. Again, they form part of the Section 75 agreement, whereby there's estimates being collated to eventually implement the road improvements that are required to make sure that development can continue to work. And as part of those measures, there are some controlled crossing points, not necessarily on Greenhills Road, but Eaglesham Road, closer to Redwood Drive. In terms of the visibility displays, just to catch on what Ian was saying there, that in terms of the new development, all of the visibility displays will be achievable through the provision. Largely, if the visibility displays at driveways are controlled by the footway, of which, if there's not a footway, there will be a grass verge. And certainly where the new roads connect onto the spine road, there will be the full modern day standards being provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, would you like to supplementary? If you're quick. Yeah. Hang on.
Yeah, I'd like to outset thank the officers actually for the work that they've done in this, because I have been asking a few questions on it as this has progressed in recent months, but still get concerns about Section 75 road issues. People are moving into this area, not just on this site, but in other parts of it, and we're still not in a place to get, you know, some of the road safety measures in place. And I think we need to start thinking, when's that going to happen? And talking about active travel. I mean, and one thing I never mentioned earlier, you go back to the master plan as well, is about subsidised or supportive bus services. And I'm not seeing how that's going to happen. And one thing that Ian mentioned, but I failed to mention as well, was hours of operation. Again, on site to now, there's developers working in this area, not this specific site, but on other sites within the community growth area. And they're just sticking two fingers up to the hours of operation, and the planning about environmental services. I've spoken to them, but I was told at the weekend it's still happening. So again, it goes back to enforcement and maybe sometimes how worthy these comments are. But as it stands at the moment, I'm intent to, I don't think we're complying with our own policy, DM1, that was highlighted by the Jackton and Thornton Hall Community Council Chair. And I would move that we continue this to allow the developer to comply with our policy, DM1, which is basically says there is no conflict with adjacent land use and no adverse or impact on existing or proposed properties in terms of overlooking, loss of privacy, overshadowing, noise or disturbance. And I think in this area, particularly of Trent, Tyne and Swift, the developers not complying in that. I acknowledge that there's been effort by planning to get some movement on that. Quite frankly, I don't think the developer's done enough, and I would move continuation to allow them to look at that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Just before I ask if you've got a seconder, are you looking for this to be deferred?
Yeah, just continue.
Okay, and is there MD willing to second Councillor Watson's amendment? I do have Councillor Bert Thompson, but I'm unsure if that was to second him. He has been sitting for a while. So I'll bring in Councillor Thompson and I'll come back to Councillor Watson.
It's okay.
Councillor Thompson, that's you live now.
Right, thank you. I'll make it very brief. Just an observation to start with, aimed at no one. And I think it's been said before, we do have an opportunity, and I think we should all be using it to contact chairs, deputy chairs and officers as well to get clarity maybe before these meetings. Having said that, everybody's entitled to speak at meetings, I appreciate that. 54 new houses for social rent is fantastic, but there's a bit of disquiet I've heard. I don't live in the area, but I've heard a bit of disquiet. People are asking, have we got this size of build, the facilities to support students, especially regarding secondary schools? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Noted about the chairs and the deputy chairs. I'll ask Ian just to come in just on your point.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Yes, from the outset, we've been liaising with the Education Service. They've confirmed that there is secondary school capacity at Duncanrig. That, as I say, that underpins the entire master plan, and we're working to the housing numbers that this application is in compliance with.
Right, thanks for your response. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Watson, I don't see anybody otherwise to second your amendment to the paper, agenda item number 4. I'll let you come in.
I presume that'll be noted in the minute. I presume that'll be noted in the minute, Chair, yeah.
That will generally be noted in a minute. Councillor Watson, yeah.
Councillor Watson, so just to clarify, so you want your dissent recorded? So you want your dissent recorded, just to clarify, given that you've not got a second?
Thank you. And just to make a point, Councillor Watson, as well, it is very well noticed about your concerns about the reinforcement officers within the council, and it's something that myself as chair and the deputy chair are taking seriously within the council, and I'm meeting with officers on a regular basis to make sure we can get the reinforcement to a good standard within the realms of South Lanarkshire. I will move this paper accordingly.
I'll second it.
Agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 5, application P220851, erection of 55 houses of infrastructure and landscaping at land 165 metres southwest of South Lanarkshire Lifestyle Stonehouse, Straven Road, Stonehouse, Larkhall, pages 41 to 54 in your pack, and Ian again will present this agenda. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application by Miller Homes for the erection of 55 dwellings and associated infrastructure and landscaping. The committee has asked that it approve the following recommendation of granting planning permission. It will be subject to a Section 75 legal agreement, which will be in the respect of a financial contribution for the improvement and upgrading of educational, community and off-site affordable housing provision. The application site relates to an area of open grassland located on the edge of Stonehouse within the settlement boundary. The site is approximately 2.4 hectares in area and is bounded to the north by the A71 Straven Road and a new housing estate opposite, and to the east by the South Lanarkshire Lifestyles Community Facility, and to the south by agricultural land, and to the west by agricultural land and a small row of cottages. So the detailed planning permission is sought for the erection of 55 dwellings. This would comprise a mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced 3 and 4 bedroom dwellings finished in white and Tuscan render with grey concrete roof tiles. The site would be accessed from a new arm of the existing roundabout to the northeast of the site. It would incorporate a section of land associated with the adjacent community facility. It would also include a new footway link onto Straven Road. The development is classified as a major development under the Town and Country Planning Hierarchy of Development Scotland Regs 2009, and was the subject of a pre-application consultation in the form of an online public event in October and November of last year. A number of documents have been provided in support of the application, including a site investigation, traffic assessment, design and access statement, ecology report, tree survey and energy statement. The application covers a number of policies which are listed in 3.11 of the report. In terms of the residential development, the Scottish Government SPP advises that the planning system should enable the development of well-designed, energy-efficient, good quality housing, and that the council must also maintain a 5-year supply of effective housing land. Planning permission in principle application for the site was submitted in November 2015. This application was granted at Planning Committee in April 2016, subject to a Section 75 agreement. However, these matters were never included in the consent fell away. In terms of the consultations, there was a number carried out. There was no negative responses from any, and following statutory neighbour notification and an advertisement in the local press, there was no representations received either. So in terms of the assessment and the conclusions, as we say, it's proposed for the erection of 55 dwellings at the site adjacent to the Lifestyles community facility. In terms of the local development plan it identifies the site within the settlement boundary where general urban areas policy is applicable. The Council's residential development guide is also relevant and provides guidance on the design and layout of new house developments, to which this proposal complies. In the case of this application, there is a mix of 10 house types over 3 and 4 bedroom, detached, semi-detached and terrace properties. In terms of the Policy 7 Community Infrastructure Assessment, as outlined at the start, through this proposal, the developers will be contributing towards improved community facilities, improved education facilities, and our housing service have asked that a commuted sum is provided in lieu of provision of social housing elsewhere within the authority area. In summary, the council is satisfied that it complies with all the relevant policies in the Local Development Plan 2 and would recommend granting in this instance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Any questions or comments? Councillor Norman Ray.
Thank you. It's just regarding point 4.12, the response from Countryside and Green Space, where they have suggested that the inclusion of additional footway along the front of the site. And I noticed the planning response was that it did not consider that necessary, but should permission be granted, a suitable condition can be attached in relation to the pathway specification. I don't think, I might be wrong, I don't think that was included in the conditions, proposed conditions listed. So I wonder whether the committee maybe should add that in, should we be approving it?
Councillor Agu moving that be added?
Yes.
And if you get a seconder for that? Sorry, okay, I'll just clarify with Ian first and then I'll see if there's a seconder to that. Sorry, Ian, shoot.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ray, it's condition 15. We've referred to the pathway that prior to any development dwellings being approved, the pathway located shall thereafter be maintained. Is that the one that we were looking at?
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Agu, happy with condition 15, which states it in there? Yeah, okay. Any other further questions or comments? I'll move that paper accordingly. Everybody agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, application P220469. It's a mixed use of development incorporating residential dwellings, hotel, office, care home, retail, restaurant, cafe, open space and associated works at the former University of West of Scotland site in Almada Street. And just before I bring in Bernard on pages 55 to 70 in your pack, I do think this is a very good news story for Hamilton. And in my opinion, as the chair of this committee, that this is the start of developing this site within Hamilton. And it's a pleasure to introduce it here today. Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair mentioned, this application relates to the approval of matters specified in conditions on the former University of West of Scotland site, just a short distance from where we're sitting today. It relates to an area of land located to the northwest of Hamilton Town Centre, which sits adjacent to the Civic Centre and was previously predominantly in educational use as part of the University of West of Scotland. It extends to approximately 4 hectares. It's irregular in shape and relatively flat. The majority of the site can be cleared and forms part of a larger 7.5 hectare site, which formed the whole planning permission in principle which was previously granted for a mixed-use development. The site has prominent frontages onto both Almada Street and Barrack Street. This application has been submitted to discharge conditions, and amongst the conditions covered include layout, landscaping, phasing, noise, dust, refuse, parking arrangements, amongst others. In terms of the detail of the application, the submitted layout shows a development of 286 dwellings in addition to an energy centre. The proposed dwellings comprise 129 affordable housing units and 157 private units. In terms of the affordable housing units, 89 of these would be for South Lanarkshire Council, with the remainder being taken on by Clyde Valley Housing Association. The majority of the proposed dwellings are flatted properties containing either 1 or 2 bedrooms. The proposed buildings on site would range between 2 and 5 storeys, with higher density apartment blocks proposed along Almada Street, with a new central green space and ground floor amenities proposed, with a view to creating strong frontages. In terms of finishing materials, the roofs of the dwellings would be finished in metal standing seam roof, with the walls finished in facing brick and weatherboard, with metal railed balconies. Similar materials would be used for the dwellings. External bin and cycle stores would also be provided. In terms of local plan policy, the application site is identified within the urban area and is a proposed housing site in the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan, and therefore the principle of development is considered to be acceptable. Previously, in January 2020, a mixed-use development was approved by the Planning Committee for planning permission in principle on this site, which was also subject to a Section 75 obligation to ensure that appropriate financial contributions are made at appropriate times during the development towards additional nursery, primary and secondary education accommodation, and that suitable affordable housing was either provided on site or by way of a commuted sum. The consultation responses are summarised in section 4 of the report, and no objections have been received. One letter of support was received in relation to the application, which commented that it would provide much needed housing in the town and should be supported. In terms of the local plan policy, the application site is identified as a proposed housing site, and therefore the principle of this development is considered to be acceptable. It's also encouraged sustainable economic growth and regeneration and a move towards a low carbon economy, the protection of the natural and historic environment and mitigation against the impacts of climate change. In line with these policies, the proposal involves a redevelopment of a previously developed site, which is located in a sustainable location within a prominent area of central Hamilton and offers a unique opportunity to enhance the built environment at this location. The redevelopment of the site would result in an attractive and vibrant urban neighbourhood being created, and it would also bring other benefits in terms of climate change. The properties would be designed to the latest building standards. There would also be an energy building provided on site, which is the purpose of which is to provide a district heating network. There would also be electric vehicle charging points, a car club, and it's well located in proximity of public transport links. In terms of the detailed design of the development, it generally requires new development policies. DM5 and DM1 require new development of due regard to the layout, form, design and local context of the area and promote quality and sustainability in its design. In this instance, it's considered that the proposed layout for the development is acceptable and will provide a high quality urban development. Overall, the development is considered to be acceptable and forms the first phase of a mixed-use development. The provision of affordable housing is to be encouraged, and it is therefore recommended that the application is approved. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Bernard. I'll just open up for any comments or questions. Got Councillor Donnelly online. Councillor Donnelly, that's you live now.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome this innovative development. I did have the opportunity, I think it would be true 2020, to go and see the plans at the old Almada College, the Bell College, to see what was coming on stream. And I think it was very, very innovative and to be encouraged to go forward. So I'm really glad to see that that's coming forward now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Comments are noted. Councillor Bert Thompson. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. That's you.
Right, thanks very much, Chair. Just a like for like, how many sort of car parking places would be lost compared to how many would be gained? Is there a comparison? Is it worth noting that? Just for my information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll ask Bernard just to comment on that.
Thank you, Chair. There's approximately, I think, 294 spaces being provided, and there would be 28 lost. There's also proposals for electric vehicle charging, and there's also further proposals which we've got condition about, is the provision of a car club on site, which would be available for residents to use and would reduce the requirements for the number of parking on site. And we've also got a further condition just to look at any additional impact of the development on parking.
Thank you, Bernard.
Bernard, thank you. That's very positive response. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Chair. Bernard, when you were speaking about the report, this is part of a kind of a master plan, a larger master plan. I did express concerns at the time when it was first spoke about, because right on the corner of the site there's quite a large car park, and I know it's not for grabs here today, it's not for decision here today, but can you remind me, is that still part of the overall plan to take away that very large car park that's there at the moment?
Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is phase 1, so there would be further phases that we would have to look at and just assess the impact on parking at that time, and it would depend on what was included within the proposal for that part of the site. But yes, that's something that we might have to look at in the future.
Supplementary, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's in my ward, and I don't want to be the fly in the ointment. I know everybody's welcomed the report, but as a local councillor for the area, I am very aware of the restricted parking in the area. People will be well aware of that. So it's something that I'm concerned about. So you hinted at it, Bernard, but I don't know if it was clear enough for me. Are we going to be losing spaces eventually in that corner? Is overall a number of spaces going to be reduced? Maybe that's a better question.
Thank you. Bernard, just before Bernard comes in, I know that Bernard has done constructive work over the past week or so, because he actually came back to us because we asked the same questions at the same time, and there was a parking survey done as well, but I'll let Bernard just come in and answer that point for you. Bernard?
Thank you. Yes, there will be a loss of 28 spaces as part of this proposal, the current proposal, and in terms of the future development, we would have to look at that as and when, but yes, it would take away further spaces, but it would depend on what was included in the development and what we were looking at. In terms of this proposal, we've got some conditions, as I mentioned to Councillor Thompson in my response, and we're just looking at what the impacts of that would be and to mitigate against that. But yes, going forward, it's something that in the next phase, it would probably be a bigger consideration and a bigger component of that development to consider.
Last supplementary, Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, well, that's encouraging because, as Bernard said, we can look at that nearer the time, because I have got serious concerns about the loss of parking provision in that area. 28 for this development, that's a very small amount, and given the benefits that we're going to be getting, that's acceptable, but we can look at that as and when. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. We did, myself and the Deputy Chair did raise concerns at the same time with the officers when we were discussing this agenda item. And like yourself, it was a good news story, and it will come back for us to discuss further. It will be noted as well that we're in different times at the moment in COVID, and the car parks aren't just as busy. But again, they could become busy. Things could change. So we also raised all that at the same time. So it is something at the forefront of our conversations as well. Any other comments? Or No, I will gladly move this report.
I'll second it.
Everybody agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 7 is page 71 to 88 in your pack. This is the application and erection of a restaurant with ancillary takeaway and new vehicular access, parking and associated works. And I'll ask Ian to talk through this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this application is for the erection of a restaurant with an ancillary takeaway and new vehicular access, parking and associated works, and it's at 235 Stonelaw Road in Rutherglen. The site is a former petrol station and it extends to approximately 570 square metres. It's flat and is currently vacant, although it contains security fencing around its perimeter. All equipment associated with the petrol station was removed several years ago following decommissioning of the site. Historically, the site has two accesses from its use as a petrol station, one to the north of the site off the private access road serving the adjacent flatted blocks, and a second to the western elevation onto Stonelaw Road. The two flatted blocks sit adjacent to the site at its front to its north and east, with a 3-metre high wall separating the site and the closest residential block to the east. To the south is a Tesco food store, and to the west is Stonelaw Road and the junction with View Park Drive with residential properties opposite. The applicant is seeking detailed planning permission for the erection of a restaurant with ancillary takeaway incorporating an improved vehicular access, car parking and associated works. This would comprise of a single-storey building with a monopitch roof, approximately 140 square metres, and floor area located on the southern side of the site. And internally, this would provide a kitchen, servery, staff facilities, seating area and a takeaway waiting area. The remainder of the site would be occupied by 7 parking spaces, 2 disabled spaces, including a bay for electrical vehicle charging and bicycle parking spaces. In terms of the local plan status, the site is located within the settlement boundary of Burnside, where the General Urban Area Policies, Policy 3 and Policy 5, Development Management and Placemaking are both applicable. As it's also a designated local centre, Policy 9, Network of Centres and Retailing is also relevant, and the proposal also includes an ancillary hot food takeaway. Therefore, Policy DM9 is relevant, along with Policies 2, Climate Change, and DM1, New Development Design. In terms of the background, the property was originally a petrol filling station with an associated shop. Following its closure, a temporary planning consent was granted for a hand car wash. However, during its period of operation, there were various issues, and as such, the permission was not renewed. In 2016, planning permission was granted for use of the site as an office with ancillary external display. However, this was also never implemented. And in October 2017, planning permission was granted for the erection of a 1.5 metre security fence following demolition of the previous building, and this was implemented. The most recent application for the site was in 2018, where planning permission in principle was granted for a residential development. However, this again was never implemented and subsequently expired. In terms of the consultations, there was 5 carried out, and there were largely no issues raised by any of them. In terms of representations, there was 21 letters of objection and 13 letters of support, and the points are summarised below. Just to pick them out, mainly it was in relation to the number of restaurants and takeaways already existing within Burnside. There was comments regarding the increase in traffic, dirt, pollution and odours, loss of amenity to Stonelaw Towers and such like. I would point out that previously, as part of the proposal, there was some external benches were proposed. However, these have been removed following some of the concerns raised by some neighbours. Moving on to the assessment, as I say, it's for an ancillary takeaway with a erection of a restaurant. As you'll see from the site background, there have been a number of challenges in the site being developed, and as time goes by, it's becoming more of an eyesore every day. So the council are keen to see it redeveloped. It is within a local centre and adjacent to an established residential area. However, it would be proposed adjacent to an existing food store, and premises of this type are not uncommon either in Burnside or any other similar local centre. It would be noted that the redevelopment of the site would also mean that the site could be greatly improved. The proposed materials are very much in keeping with the locality. Just finally, the representations which related to matters such as a number of other facilities, similar facilities in the area, that's not a material planning consideration. We need to treat them all treat them all on their own merits. As I say, the council are satisfied that the proposal complies with all the relevant policies, and we would therefore recommend grant in this instance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Any questions or comments? Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chair. Just make a point regarding the 6th proposed condition to do with the storage of waste and waste collection. I'm aware that this particular area, in common with a lot of town centre areas, has problems with bins being left out on pavements and so on, which often causes problems for residents and such like, and sort of the general amenity of the area. So I was just wondering whether the sort of plan of arrangement that would be made with the council, would that include very specific timings as to how long before and after bins are being collected they have to be removed from the pavement, or would it be possible to be more specific in the condition regarding that matter?
I'll ask Ian to try and comment the best he can on that.
Thank you, Chair. The way this would normally work, Councillor, is that we would receive proposed details from the developer. We would then go back to the Council's Environmental Service and we would agree a bin collection procedure with them, and that would cover both the type of bin that would be proposed on site, where it would be located, and they would also agree a date for when it would be collected. In theory, yes, it could be worded into an additional condition. However, I believe there is sufficient, there is enough flexibility in the wording of the condition to allow that matter to be agreed with Environmental Services post-decision. And then obviously our Environmental Service colleagues would liaise for an ongoing period of time to ensure that it was working properly. But the onus is now pushed back to the developer to ensure that they provide us with an acceptable form of bin collection. And they wouldn't be allowed to open the facility until that has been agreed.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Councillor Convery.
Chair, just to be helpful to yourself, Norman, we don't get involved with trade waste. We don't pick that up. It's private contractors that pick it up, and it's a restaurant that's getting built, so there'll not be a problem. Okay? Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Convery. I have Councillor Cowie online. Thank you, Councillor Cowie, that's you.
Right, obviously this application is part of my ward. I just wanted to say I know where Norman's coming from, because currently the shops across the road are leaving their big bins on the pavement in View Park Drive, which is blocking people walking up and down. But as Jerry said, you know, it's trade waste. But I think that's how they're looking. Norman is bringing it up, that we didn't want that to happen on Stonelaw Road. Just in respect to the application, whilst I'm not objecting to it, I am a bit worried about the traffic, the entrance in and out of this restaurant. Stonelaw is a very busy road. It's right next to a bus stop, which services about 4 or 5 buses. There's also numerous restaurants across the road from it, and it's an extremely busy street. Tesco's next door to it as well. While Tesco's got a big car park, people don't park there to access the restaurants across the road. They're parking on Stonelaw Road, and I just feel that for this restaurant to have vehicular access off Stonelaw Road is going to cause numerous problems. Also, I'm a bit concerned how they're going to build a restaurant and have 7 car parking spaces. It's not a huge site. So I'm just wondering if somebody can come back and reassure me a wee bit about, have they considered the amount of traffic, the fact it's next to a bus stop, which services, it's a very busy bus stop. Stonelaw Road, it's jam-packed with traffic. So if somebody could maybe come back to me and reassure me a wee bit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cowie. Just on your first point about the bins, and obviously that would be a local matter for you to raise, specifically with environmental, and I'd probably urge you to do that. But for here, this is to consider agenda item 7, and I do get your concerns about the bin provision. I'm going to ask Fraser to come in just in the part about the roads and the parking, because I do note that in 4.1 the roads and transportation services were advised. Fraser.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, first of all, I would say this site was obviously a former petrol filling station, had a lot of movements in between along Stonelaw Road. One of the things we looked at was just trying to make the access a bit safer, and one of the things that is proposed here is that the access will be moved.
Sorry, Fraser, can I ask you just to turn your mic forward to you, just ever so slightly?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, one of the, I'm not sure what you heard there, previously this site was a petrol filling station, and that was one of the considerations that we had when we reviewed this. As you mentioned, there is a bus stop very close to that, and the proposals actually move the access slightly further back from the bus stop, so it will improve what was already the access there, and will be a bit more streamlined. The other access to the site will be closed off, so there will only be the one access into and out of the site. In terms of the parking numbers, this is obviously a site that's within the town centre, and we'd be looking for people to walk to the site given the large catchment in here. But we're satisfied that the cars can come in and out. We did have a look at the accident record in the last 3 years, and there's not been any accidents within the vicinity of there, albeit I know the car wash was an operation that was not for the full time, but there's not been any accidents in that sort of area. Thank you.
Thank you. Fraser, Councillor Cowie, do you want to come in back in any supplementary?
Yeah, if I could. How far down are you going to move the entrance? Because obviously you've got the entrance to View Park and the tennis club opposite as well. And just before that, you've got a very, very busy junction. So I'd be satisfied it's not going to cause any issues. I know we had the petrol station before, but that's been a huge number of years ago.
Fraser?
Yeah, no, sorry, maybe giving you the misunderstanding there. The existing access that's there at the moment is very wide. So what we'll be doing is reducing the width of that access to roughly about 5.5 metres. So I don't know the exact measurement from what it was to what it will be. I would estimate it would be around about 5 metres further back. So
almost the space of a car back from where the existing access was, if that helps.
Thank you. Does that clarify your question, Councillor Cowie?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks. Thanks, Fraser.
Councillor Salamati?
Okay,
Councillor
hi.
Salamati, that's you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Part of my question's been asked by Councillor Cowie before me regarding the bus stop. Will the bus stop remain in place or will it be moved and stuff? That was my question, because it seems to be officer mentioned that the main building will be built in the south part of the site. And looks like a main, the display, everything is going to be, the behind the car park and the big mobile mast infrastructure. So will that be having an impact? I mean, on the infrastructure for mobile mast? There are lots of, green boxes. I don't know what's inside them, but will it have an impact on that? Will it need to be moved? Has these things been considered? Basically, these two elements.
Thank you. Fraser?
Thank you. Yeah, it's really the visibility that would be the issue, and the footway at that point, I feel is quite wide. So I don't think that would be interfering in any kind of road safety issue. So yeah, we were quite satisfied when we went out that the access would work well. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Any further comments or questions? I will move this report.
I'll second it.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Agenda item 8, application P211127 for the erection of 6 wind turbines. Mulry Rig Wind Farm, Waterhead, Peel Hill and Limbank Highway, Straven. And I'll ask Tony to present this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a detailed application submitted by Banks Renewables Limited for the erection of wind farm on land known as Millrig. The application site is extensive, extends to 393 hectares. It mainly comprises commercial forestry within an area of rolling moorland. It's located on the western boundary of the council's area, and it's approximately 12 kilometres southwest of Straven. All the turbines proposed would sit within the council's area. The access proposed is from the A71, which would serve the wind farm. That access point and the access track is within East Ayrshire Council's administrative boundary, and a separate application has been submitted to them for approval, and that application is currently pending consideration. The application site itself, it's adjacent to another existing wind farm known as Bankend Rig, and it's proposed to utilise part of the existing access road that serves that wind farm to serve this proposed one. So a bit more detail, permission sought for 6 turbines, as we said. 5 of them would have a maximum height to tip of 250 metres, with the 6th one having a maximum height of 209 metres to tip. And the proposal also involves associated infrastructure such as electrical control buildings and cabling. Consultation responses are described in section 4 of the report. No objections are now outstanding from consultees, and a range of matters raised by them are addressed in conditions listed in the paper apart. And in addition, following publicity of the application, no representations have been received. So a detailed assessment of the application is set out in section 6 of the report. Now, as always with this type of application, the impact on visual and landscape character is a key consideration. In this case, the Council's approved landscape capacity framework shows the application site is within an area defined as having medium capacity for turbines of the scale proposed. The turbine layout itself has been designed as a tight cluster to minimise the visual spread within the landscape. As I said, the site's also located next to Bankend Rig wind farm, which results in the locality not being characterised as being remote. And that existing wind farm also sets the context for wind farm development in this area. The number and height of the turbines is, in relation to the scale of the landscape, relatively modest, and it minimises the spread across the large rolling landscape. The surrounding forestry will have a softening effect on the turbines within the landscape. In addition, the remote location of the proposals, that means there's limited potential impact on residential amenity. That means both in terms of visual impact, but also technical issues such as noise and shadow flicker. So it's considered that due to the design of the development, the distance and screening, the effects of the proposals on surrounding residential amenity would not be of a scale that would be significantly impacted. A wide range of technical matters have also been assessed in the report, including impacts on the historic environment, ecology, and road and air safety, and all these are considered to be acceptable or capable of mitigation. The proposals therefore comply with the development plan and other supporting guidance on this type of development, and therefore it's recommended that plan permission be granted. That's subject to the conditions listed in the paper part. In addition, it's also recommended that consent is not issued until a legal agreement covering the matters listed on the front page of the report is concluded.
Thank you, Tony. Any comments or questions? No, I'll move this report.
I'll second it.
Agreed. Good. Agenda item 9. Application P220349, extension to time period of plan permission for a further 3 years at Larkhall Community Growth Area, Summerlee Road, Larkhall, and I'll ask Bernard to present the item.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to an area of land located to the northeastern edge of Larkhall and forms the eastern portion of Larkhall Community Growth Area. The site is bounded by roads for much of its extent, with the M74 and A72 corridors lying to the north and east of the site, and Meriton Road bounding the site to the northwest. A large area of the Larkhall Community Growth Area has already been developed with the construction of residential dwellings. In terms of background information, planning permission in principle was previously granted for residential development with associated landscaping, roads, neighbourhood centre, community facilities and infrastructure works in May 2014 by the Planning Committee. This was further extended in April 2019, and now the applicant seeks to extend the time period for commencement of development by a further 3 years. Initially, the proposal the applicant put forward was to extend it by 5 years, but following discussion with the planning service, it was agreed that a 3-year period would be suitable. In terms of the planning permission in principle that was granted in May 2014, it was subject to a legal agreement with certain requirements at different phases of the development within the CGA. Some of the improvements required include works to the roads infrastructure, including alterations to the A72 Lanark Road, the M74 Junction 7, including the southbound and northbound slip roads and associated improvements. Also, further requirements for contributions associated with education, community facilities, transportation infrastructure, affordable housing. To date, it's only residential that has been constructed, and the northern part of the CGA towards Meriton, which was identified for community facilities, has not yet progressed. In terms of the local plan, the application site is identified as forming part of the Larkhall Community Growth Area within the adopted local plan, and the site is also identified as a proposed housing site and is covered by the Green Network. The principle of residential development has previously been established at this location, and in terms of the policy, the proposal still complies. As mentioned previously, there is an existing consent in place for the wider CGA, and it's only the residential elements that have been constructed thus far. Following neighbour notification that was undertaken, one representation was received which objected to the proposal due to concerns about wildlife on the site. This matter has previously been considered to have been addressed, but in order to ensure that any changes on site are fully considered, appropriately worded conditions would be attached to the consent to address these matters. In summary, It is considered that the proposal complies with the local development plan and raises no amenity issues or concerns. In view of the above, there is nothing from a planning perspective that would indicate that a different decision to that previously made should now be reached, subject to the permission being restricted to the standard 3-year time period for the submission of further applications for approval of matters specified in conditions. The application is considered to be acceptable, and it is recommended that planning permission be granted based on the conditions attached. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Bernard. Any questions or comments? No. I'll move this report.
I'll second it.
Everybody agreed? I have no items of urgent business. Can I ask the clerk to please stop the recording of the meeting, and thank you all for your attendance here today. Thank you.